So in this video I am going to read a little bit of humanism and pre-reformation theology. So here it is. Just listen and think of the time in history from 15th 16th century, maybe earlier, in Rome, where there was a lot of religious thinking going on and people were believers of the church, but still there was a lot of focus on wisdom, learning. But the main thing which was happening was people were beginning to wonder what is religion if humanity or human nature is not defined. So here it is. The relation between Renaissance humanists and Christian theology was an indirect one. Humanists need not have dealt with the theological problems of their day in any extended way. Since humanism was a literary pedagogical movement based on the recovery of ancient culture, it would have been possible and valid for humanists to have avoided theological matters and most aspects of religious thought by defining their studies in a narrow fashion. It could have been accomplished by emphasizing philology and pedagogy. Philology is the study of languages or writings, and pedagogy is the science of education, to the exclusion of any religious overtones in their teachings. Almost from the outset, however, religious, Renaissance humanists dealt to a greater or lesser extent and selectively with important theological topics in a manner that complemented the literary foundations of humanism. When dealing with religious and theological material, the humanists first had to defend their right to discuss those matters which had been monopolized by the professional theologians and the members of religious orders, and then to show that their recourse to antique models in no manner compromised the religious sincerity of their undertaking or the orthodoxy of their teachings. Since some humanists had determined to deal with theological questions, they had to find a bridge that could unite their literary and philosophical interests to standard theology. That bridge was moral philosophy. The humanists interpreted moral philosophy in a manner that could be easily assimilated into their literary rhetorical culture. The ideal of the ancient orator who expressed his humanitas with eloquence provided the humanists with a model to use in aiding fellow citizens to live a moral life without withdrawing from the world. But to offer moral advice required a clear understanding of society's religious and theological ideals. Humanists, as moral counselors to the urban laity of communal Italy, expanded their area of concern to criticize the professional theology of the later Middle Ages for not addressing the realities of this Italian world. So here they are saying that when the church people or the religious people in Italy, they had sidelined the questions of the reality of the people in favor of the received views about religion. So this the moral philosophy served as the link which could connect the religious thinking, theology, and as well as humanist thought. Okay. So moral advice, when somebody started giving moral advice to the people, he was thought to be connecting a bridge, or making a bridge between the religious beliefs of church and people who believed in religion. On a more positive note, They had to move to a general redefinition of those elements which were most valid for the Christian learned in ancient culture and inhabiting an urban environment filled with temptations. Humanists dealt with theology as part of the cultural world they wished to reform according to the precepts abstracted from their study of antiquity. Theology, as a component of moral philosophy, had to be brought into conformity with humanist ideals generally. This process required a reassessment of the medieval theology developed by the monks and the mendicant friars, which served as a classical environment. The critical issue was not to propose new doctrines, but rather to alter the attitudes and deeds of men. Humanists meant to change attitudes and affect action. Consequently, we should not expect to find in humanist theological thought a complete dogmatical exposition. Rather, we find on the one hand a critique of method, language, logic, and presentation, and on the other hand, an emphasis on those topics with theological features that relate directly to moral action but did not receive any extended treatment from the professional theologians. When humanists did discuss standard theological questions such as free will, they did so with little concern for the dogmatic ideas developed in the Middle Ages. Two terms popularized by Charles Trinkaus provide a basic orientation for appreciating humanist thought and its various emphases. These are theologiae rhetorica or rhetorical theology and anthropological theology. Both refer to the particular humanistic quality in Renaissance religious thought. Theologica rhetorica is the presentation of theological concepts in an eloquent fashion so as to move the will of the hearer or read or reader to embrace them more fully and easily. It is therefore a clear development from the principles of ancient rhetoric. Rhetorical theology displays the full blending of theology with humanistic educational principles. The second term, anthropological theology, refers to the humanists' concern with God and religion, which was inseparable from their concern with man in his otherworldly destiny and this worldly condition. In some, humanists balanced the principles laid down for securing salvation with the difficulties they realized people experienced on earth living with their families and in society. Humanists understood the tensions implicit for any Christian who maintained an active life in the world, and they formed their theological ideas to meet this dilemma. Humanists, even when they were clerics, did not write for professional theologians or for monks insulated from the daily tribulations of secular life. Their audiences consisted of men who had to strive for salvation among the competing demands of merchant, political, and professional life, where temptations could not be avoided and where moral pressures were constant. The ideal of Saint Francis of Assisi, giving all to the poor and serving only God, clashed with the need of a man to feed his family and serve his state. Thank you guys. It was I read 2 pages from this Humanism and Pre-Reformation Theology chapter. It's written by um, what's his name? Amico. John F. D. Amico. John F. D'Amico. Okay. So book's name is Roman and German Humanism.